I'm affected by exit.
Okay, why don't we get the meeting going?
I think White House Road is one of the reasons we can get.
Yeah. We'll do some introductions rather. We'll start with you, Bill.
Bill Connor at Sommersworth.
Victoria Parmley Dorothy.
Ken Ortmann, City of Rochester.
Tom Crosby, Medford.
Bob Jaffin, Rochester.
Brian Tapscott, Sommersworth.
Marilyn Barton, Strafford Regional.
Shana Sylvia, Strafford Regional.
There we go. All right. First item on the agenda is approval of the amended minutes of June 21st Executive Committee meeting.
I attended that meeting, so I will make the minutes. I will make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
So second.
Second.
Second by Bob. Discussion?
Just the typo corrections, the top, should mention.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes of July 19th, 2013 Executive Committee meeting. July 19th.
Ooh, I think that meeting as well. That's one of those. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes as presented.
Motion made by Ken Ortmann, seconded by
I'll second it.
Bill Connor. All in favor, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Actually, I think I left early on that one, didn't I?
I don't know. Sandra? Okay, moving right along, approval of the minutes of August 16, 2013 Executive Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I have to read this. I wasn't here, so I'm not going to make a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Bob, seconded by Tom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstained? Okay. Tom abstained too, right, Tom? No, Tom was here.
That'd be interesting.
People sometimes that they can't move or they have to abstain from minutes.
If you went here.
Robert's Rules of Order doesn't require that, so I wasn't, yes, I was a voting member. I mean, I voted in favor of those actions.
For years, I think.
Okay, the September monthly minor revisions.
Okay, for purposes of discussion, I am going to make a motion that we endorse the executive director's recommendation of the approval of these changes to the projects as proposed.
Motion by Ken Ortmann, second by Sandy. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving right along, the approval of the fiscal FY 2015 commission dues.
Mr. Chair, if there's not a presentation for the purposes of discussion, I'll be willing to make a motion so we can engage in discussion.
Okay.
Second.
My motion is that the rates would stay the same.
I'll still second that.
Okay, motion made, seconded.
I'll
Discussion?
second it.
Already got Tom. Okay, seconded. Discussion?
What I would like, I was not here at the meeting where that issue was discussed, and before I actually vote, I'd like to hear what the rationale, I'd like to hear what folks who had suggested that we modify it down, what the rationale was. That would be helpful for me to make my final decision in terms of how I vote.
Well,
That was me.
me too.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Not pleased with the amount of participation, and I think it's worth reducing 1 year to see if we can get up participation. Plain and simple, nothing complex at all.
Okay, that was my way of thinking too.
Now,
Now, if I could, I thought at one time Cynthia discussed about lowering the rates for some of the towns that don't pay their dues, and keeping it the same for the ones that do, something like that? Did you call it something like that? Or is it gonna be all across the board? Was she talking about that?
I'd be uncomfortable with creating special conditions. for
Well,
people.
that's what I was thinking. I thought that's what she was talking about at one time, but I probably didn't hear it right.
So can I do a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Bob, did you have, I think the idea is certainly worth exploring, worth talking about, and obviously you did that last meeting. I guess my question is, do we have any indication that there are communities who, if we did this, would consider membership more seriously?
Based on my discussions with Cynthia over a period of time and the general feeling, to be perfectly honest, 80-20, 80 against 24. But if you don't try it, you don't know. And that, again, that's gut reaction. I wouldn't even say it's 50-50 to be honest, but if you don't do it, you don't know. We do it for a year, it doesn't work. It's not the end of the world. That was my reasoning. If the economy were better, I wouldn't object to increasing it. It's not yet. I'm really more concerned with the participation. And that's what I was trying to address. And I understand, it's no way, any way you cut it, it's a crapshoot. There is no guarantee here.
I didn't know, I mean, if we had talked to some communities and if they had said, you know, we will consider this or we'll be more actively opposed it or support it at town meetings and that sort, then from my standpoint, I would be more inclined.
My gut feeling that there were one or two communities who just felt it was too much, the current dues. And again, that's a gut feeling. I cannot say these communities, but I believe in my discussions there were a couple of communities that have been mentioned over at various times, not every single time. So that was the reasoning. I can understand either way. I don't think this is one where we're all necessarily have to agree or going to agree. But yeah, I'm definitely for a one-year cut. That's it.
I don't know whether Cynthia was able to before she got away, but I thought she was, I went from the meeting saying that she would attempt to contact them specifically, individual towns.
That's
and
what
find
I
out
thought also.
That's about what I heard
Whether she had-
earlier when I was mentioning.
whether she's had a chance before because she left fairly soon after last meeting, didn't she? No, maybe a couple of weeks.
In terms of,
I don't think she's.
I mean, that's sort of a new component to the discussion that I had. In terms of timing, this needs to be proposed early enough for things to go out to town meetings and all those kinds of things. Is it, well, mess things up if we delay it another month to find out whether or not Cindy's had a chance to get that kind of
I think we really need it for Thursday night.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, that's our point. Okay.
That's one of the items we're gonna be voting on Thursday night.
Okay.
I just want to say, I think it sends a bad message. If it's an 80-20 thing and the 20% might come in, I think it sets a bad message for all of the towns to say we're willing to lower our rates because maybe, I mean, some people might say, well, maybe there's not that value in it. I just think it sends a bad message. And I think the towns who don't think it's a good value now, I don't think it's going to change.
I don't think it's an issue of good or bad value. Those who don't think it's a value are not going to change. It's those who simply can't afford it.
Right.
And that's a hard thing for people to say outright. So again, I like I say, just Ken asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go out for a year and take a chance and see, and if it doesn't work, we'll go right back to where we were, or if things are looking better, it would increase. But that was my rationale, plain and simple. It wasn't a complex issue as far as I was concerned.
That's
crapshoot.
That brings into question, how much of a cut can we stand? If we did that.
It's going to be hard to go back up once you get out.
Exactly.
See, I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I would put it out as a one-year reduction.
Can we make a vote how we want to go?
Yes. Yeah, so is there a motion? Motion was made, seconded, right? So, without further ado,
You said we couldn't delay it for a month?
Correct, because we need to bring this to the full membership at meetings.
Commissioners are on Thursday night.
Okay.
All right. So, we're voting on the approval of the FY 2015 commission dues. All in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make it as part of the record, thanking Bob for tossing out this idea, and I would like ask Cynthia to formally ask communities if during their next round of funding, again, this is just a recommendation to the full commission, so they can decide to do something different Thursday evening anyway, but this is the kind of sort of thinking outside the box, trying different things that I think is good for us to do, and I think we ought to still pursue the issue regardless of what happens next Thursday evening, so I'd like that to be part of that. Okay. That's my opinion.
Pursue the issue that we find out if it would make a difference.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
No, I think it's a good idea.
You know, I mean, maybe there's a way that we could say, I mean, I think there are all sorts of ideas that kind of come from Bob's suggestion. One would be to say to a community, okay, we'll make this offer to you. We'll give you half price this year and then a full price next year. If you give us a good faith commitment that you will continue, you will rejoin and continue, not just for taking advantage of our being. So I mean, I think getting those conversations going, I think might also help talk about value. I mean, if people don't see value, I don't care if it's a nickel. I don't want to pay a nickel for nothing if there's no value to it. On the other hand, I'm willing to pay $50 if I think I'm getting $50 more worth of value. So I think it may provide an entree to more discussions with those communities about what is it that we do and is there a way for us to bring more value. So I think engaging in that discussion is very productive.
All right. Now we're on to approval of the Strafford Regional Planning Commission billing rate structure for 2014.
Here's just a clarification on both the one above and this one. We have, the agenda says approval of, and my understanding would be that the commission dues are set by the commission as a whole. So it really would be more precise to look at each of these things, I think, as a motion to recommend to the full commission. Was that one?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're recommending to the full commission
Right.
Thursday night, yeah,
Okay.
for these changes.
And so, in that context, I will also make a motion, even though I wasn't involved in the discussion, and we talked about it during our last meeting, that we present the proposed fiscal year 14 billing rate structure, as we said.
Second?
Discussion?
Yeah, I read the discussion in the minutes, but other than that, I didn't know.
Okay.
There's other issues.
Okay, so approval of the Strafford Regional Planning Commission billing rate structure for 2014 to forward on to the full commission on this coming Thursday evening. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can I ask one other question? Sure. The handout here shows the fiscal year 14 per hour rates, and then it shows fiscal year 15 per hour rates. And the discussion at the top talks about fiscal year 14. Is there a reason why, obviously we haven't adopted fiscal year 15 rates. Is that typo? Should that be 13 or? I'm just a little confused as to why that.
I'll bet it is.
I'm pretty sure that was originally 13 and 14.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're showing here is that there are a couple of areas where we decrease the hourly rate by $5. But it should be 13 per hour rate, so we the first column and 14 the second.
That would be my assumption.
Okay, okay. Then I took off. Thank you.
Okay. Fiscal year 2013 achievements. By that, we all have 3A. I'll read them off. Number one is fiscal year management of contracts. A, spend down of contracts closing in June with minimal over expenditure, and B, staying on track with continuing contracts. 2 is moving the agency into digital age with both software, hardware, social media, and general operations, change in focus of staff services and programs provided. 3, extensive public outreach program for regional master plan, work with advisory team. 4, positive handling of leadership transition and public outreach to dissenting public interests. 5, recruitment of interns, training and mentoring of staff, increased use of human resources capacity through Marilyn Barton certification and training. 6, submittal of City of Rochester EDA grant, DES/Sommersworth / Strafford Regional Planning Commission, Brownfield grant, EPA technical assistance grant, DOT/New Hampshire North Coast, thank you, / Strafford Regional Planning Commission Tiger grant, DES Coastal Program grant, DOT UPWP grant, DES Local Source Water grant, and several municipal grants. So, discussion?
Makes you tired just to think of all the things that we, sometimes when you look back and look at the top, you get so caught up in looking forward and doing new things. But it is a good idea to look back occasionally and sort of recognize the things that have been accomplished by the organization. And this is a pretty impressive list. Again, speaking from the perspective of Rochester, 2 of those, under item number 6, 2 of those items, both the EDA grant and the Tiger grant, directly affect things that are really important to the community. So we're really pleased with the accomplishments of this past year in that way.
So what do you make a motion to make it part of the record? Or?
Well, it's part of the record. This is just for discussion, I think, or just to have bring up to speed on what's happened. But I just, as one member, using aware of my Rochester hat, I'm appreciative of what staff has been able to accomplish, and in the context of the whole Granite State Futures, the issues that got raised, the amount of questions that got raised about all of that, that can be very distracting. And in spite of all of that, we still have accomplished some really important things. Kudos to staff for being able to do that.
Any other discussion?
I'd just like to second, especially that last part, because it was being on the advisory committee and had a meeting this week for the Granite State Future Project, and I'm just really impressed by the staff and the work that they've been doing. And I think it's getting clearer that this is going to be a tremendous data resource for the towns. And I certainly will make that point to Northwood to make use of it.
I didn't.
Sandy, you point out this is a two-sided.
Yes.
Goals to strive for in 2014. Let me read these off. Designation as an economic development district by EDA. 2 is secure a short-term planning grant from EDA with 1 private partner, Strafford Regional Planning Commission, and OEP targeted block grant as local match. 3 is completion of this SRPC draft regional plan by June of 2014. 4, completion of REMI, and does anyone know what that means? REMI? Scenario?
Well, the Census Committee is the Economic Development Committee, so I'm pretty sure REMI stands for, or is connected with that. But let me do a quick Google search if I can get it covered. See if I can play with it.
I'll keep going on.
Yeah, no.
5 is completion of community VIS. Community 5 is, I don't know how am I supposed to pronounce that, scenario plan. 6 is funding for Dover side of Little Bay Bridges. Exit 10 in the complete streets upgrade of Route 108 from Dover to Rochester. 7 is successful completion of transportation planning review with commendations.
I think that should be recommendations. That looks like a typo to me.
Recommendations rather than commendations?
I would think so. I'm guessing here, but I don't understand where we'd be coming up with commendations.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless we were commended for the work that we did on the transportation.
This is.
Oh, it's supposed to strive for.
Needs to be checked. And that, let's go back just for a second
Sure.
on number 5.
Yep.
We need to find out whether Viz is also a couple of drop letters, a typo, or whatever.
It's the name of a scenario planning software. Community Viz.
What is?
Community Viz.
Okay.
It's the name of it.
So it's correct.
Suggest you put that in quotation marks then.
Yeah,
Community Viz.
community vision is what's.
Sheila, do you know much about
No, I don't.
Is that Kyle?
Dan has been
Dan.
working with the
Okay.
scenario planning.
Okay, number 8 is completion of public participation plan and transportation chapter for regional plan and use in metropolitan plan. 9 is completion of broadband plan by June of 2014. 10 is a successful hiring of bookkeeper for financial management of the agency.
Could you stop right there?
Sure.
That needs some clarification in my mind. My impression is that has been resolved as part-time bookkeeper.
It has been.
Question mark then?
The language there needs some work.
Okay.
But do we have an in-house bookkeeper?
No.
Or is this just a,
No,
or
we're not,
isn't that what we're looking for?
no.
Oh, we are?
No.
The decision was to go to
Because this
a
is
part-time
I think
position.
I think that problem been solved.
Yes, that's why I'm questioning it.
I thought it was a contracted service on a part-time basis.
No,
That we've
she's
done.
been hired.
We actually hired an in-house person? I didn't think we did.
We have a new person now. didn't we? I thought-
No, that is something Marilyn will have to come back and answer as to the exact structure, but the issue has been resolved.
It has been.
Okay. I need to see any notations on
11 is apply for grant funds in 2 new programs. 12 is complete strategic plan assessment with executive committee by June of 2014. Expand the website to include online mapping capacity. 14 is completion of updates to employee handbook. 15 is successful outreach to planning community via APA webinars and other training and workshop events. 16 is accurately spend down UPWP, HUD, regional plan, broadband mapping and planning and mapping verification and coastal grant. That's a mouthful. And 17 is successful purchase or replacement of computers and laptops for administrative and planning staff. Budget for plotter replacement, software upgrades, and maintenance agreements are maintained. And Merrill, we have a question on the goals to strive for.
Okay.
Number 10, successful hiring of bookkeeper for financial management of agency. Is that part-time?
That's been resolved.
It's been resolved, just like Bob said, okay.
We've hired an independent contractor.
Okay,
For 2 days a week.
yep,
And
7.
is that what we want to do from here on
Yes,
out? Is
it's
that
saving
what
us,
we wanna do?
it's
We
saving
don't
us
wanna-
tremendous
we don't wanna
costs,
focus on
personnel
that.
costs,
Okay.
and in benefits.
Okay.
That one, number 7, Marilyn, says successful completion of transportation planning review with commendations. We think it should be, what's supposed to be recommendations?
No, successful accommodation, oh, change. You know, I don't know, I wasn't part of this, putting this together.
Yep.
The planning review sometimes has commendations as well as recommendations. So, you know, if they like something we've done in particular, they will call it a commendation.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure if that's the case in this situation.
All right.
I have a quick question regarding the hiring of employees. I noticed in the minutes it talked about, at this meeting, talking about the protocol for termination of employees to ensure protected information. So I don't know, we were going to discuss this a little bit.
It's a good idea. It was,
It was talked about in the minutes, yeah, it reminded me of that, so.
So maybe that should, are you suggesting that be one that gets added?
Uh,
Or a complete update,
or-
so the handbook might be,
Yeah, I'm thinking number 14.
this is sort of a subset of that. Maybe we ought to modify that by saying including.
Because I think you might have even discussed it, that it needed to be talked about, so
There needs to be a protocol, but that, to me, that's just,
not something we need to discuss.
no, I don't think that's
Okay,
operating, that's
just to
normal
say here.
HR operating procedure, yeah. As far as I'm concerned, HR should drive that, not
Right.
not the director.
But we were supposed to talk about it at this meeting to make note of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point, somebody should be coming forward with whatever that is for us to look at.
That is something that I have to work on.
Okay.
That won't be available this coming Thursday?
Absolutely not.
All right,
Right?
yes.
Going back to number 4, REMI stands for, is the name of a company. It is Regional Economic Models Incorporated, so it's REMI. So it's a proprietary tool that is used.
Like software or something?
It's software.
Software. All right.
And
Anything else?
looking at number 17,
No.
based on what I have heard, I want to hear a much fuller justification for any water replacement. That may be better served by contracted outside services. And I'm not saying, that needs to be
I know we've
discussed.
discussed it in the
There's
past.
discussion.
Yeah.
Just to elaborate on that, and it might not even be a contracted out service, maybe there's a way of collaboratively working with other organizations or
Explore the best way to fill the need.
or
Let's put it that
member
way.
communities. Might be a way of offsetting some of their costs if they have a new unit or something. Just different ways of approaching.
All right, I'm looking at number 6,
Yeah.
exit 10, complete streets upgrade. Listening to Mr. Jaffin this morning, talking about different routes as far as where the pathway should go, the roadways and so forth. We need to firm that up. Right now, it's decided to go one way, but you say you have
It's
an
nothing to be
alternative.
firm up. There isn't even a full proposal at this point.
Right.
This is a goal for the year is to see that this happens. This won't be purely driven by SRPC.
It's something we definitely need to talk about, for sure.
Looking at those things.
Ken?
Just follow up on Bill's point, though. This seems to suggest that a goal is to have the Doverside Little Bridge, Vacant Bridges project funded, exit 10 funded, these streets upgrading, Route 108 from Dover to Rochester funded. I don't think that that's not something that we make the decision on. And number 2, I just don't think that's realistic. For us to engage in discussions about provide support material for or something, but we're not the ones that fund it. I mean, that's got to be part of the 10-year plan or local stuff, I think. So,
Yeah.
seems like we're setting up ourselves for failure, and that will fail.
Again, I think if you change the wording a little, yeah, we need to be pushing to see that funding provided, and that should be a goal of the SRPC, is distinct from obtaining. So I think it's more in the language and the semantics here.
Okay, what would you suggest for that? I agree with you, it's just language needs to change.
Continue,
And what's tough here is, if you're going to establish goals, they need to be measurable so that you can check off whether or not you accomplished them. And I don't know which piece of this big idea, big endeavor is how we can define it so that it will sort of be a checkbox.
oh, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure that's so difficult if we get the wording quite right. And I think continue to develop plans for funding of. So we're looking for plans, complete plans. So that should be driven by SRPC. They're not going to come from SRPC.
Right.
And when you get into whether this is the old route they had planned, or a new route. If I remember correctly, talking to Rochester, the development of Clark Brook means that that route is no longer viable.
The current configuration,
That's,
the
yeah.
original configuration would allow it.
So, and that's something that's highway engineering, not SRPC. That's many people will be involved, but I would say it is SRPC's goal to act as, maybe that's the answer, to act as the lead organization working towards. And that can be demonstrated by meetings we held, documents we prepare, maps that Dan prepares, any number of different things. But there's got to be a lead agency, and reasonably, I think that is SRPC. Obviously, with a lot of support from Rochester for that particular, and actually Sommersworth is deeply involved in that as well.
Sommersworth took a very major role in being a proponent at the meeting the other night.
And this may not be the place to mention it, but I was going to hold it for later. I would like to make sure that the record records that the GACIT hearings that were held in Sommersworth, without a doubt, the most outstanding presentation and the best proponent for the entire region was Mr. Ortmann. And I'd like to see that recorded there very, very definitely.
I endorse that totally.
I had a feeling you might.
Thank you, Bob.
Not being there, could you say a little bit more about it? No, but what is outstanding about it?
Mr. Ortmann was the only speaker who had his points well organized, kept it short, made it clear when he was talking as a planner, an ex-Rochester city planner,
Wore multiple
a
hats.
member of the airport board, and he was succinct, clear, direct, and focused on issues related to transportation. That cannot be said for some of the others who were speaking that evening.
That whole intermodal kind of approach.
The whole purpose of GACIT, what do you need, what do you like or don't like, what do you need, what do you want? Not how great I am, or we've got to take care of these poor people. What is it you want us to do? What should be in the plan? The only speaker that evening who stayed on target, right there at the end of the tape.
Did a fine job, surely blessed.
At this point, I'd like to welcome Ed Jansen of Rollinsford, joining us.
Honorary citizen or something or other?
Yep, that's right. Great picture in the paper.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we beat that horse to death, huh?
So I think the bottom line is, from all this discussion, except for the very last part, is number 6, we do need to look at modifying the language
Yeah.
so that it's.
Do you want to work on that now, or do you want to work on that now then?
I would say to assume the role in working towards obtaining funding for
Okay.
funding and approval. That's our role, to work hard to see that happen. No guarantees, not solely us, but to assume the role
Okay.
as lead organization to work towards obtaining funding for.
Everybody agree with that terminology?
Yeah, but with recommendations on the routes that we discussed, talking about.
Well, that would be part of it, but I wouldn't see any reason to break that particular part out. At this point, this is the earliest discussion.
Yeah.
When we talk to the individual cities, they may not want some of what I just said. So, again, I'm not presuming that. I'm just pointing out that this could be much larger than originally was discussed at GACIT or up to this point. And that would be the job of staff to start developing that and making those contacts and saying, there's no way for any number of reasons that can happen. It has to be this way.
Yeah, I'd like to add also, back in the 90s, the last time we contemplated an exit 10, what basically killed it, because I think they had representatives from Northwood, and they voted against it because the original plan was to have from the Spalding Turnpike, an east terminal and a westward terminal. And the westward terminal was dropped, but they still have representatives from Northwood that voted and shouldn't have been there to vote because it wasn't affecting them anymore. And they killed it.
And that's why I say that.
So don't push too hard to go to the western route then.
Well, that's what you discuss and find out. If none of the cities support it, then you don't do it.
Yeah.
But to not look at it as a total connector that helps to bypass and pull the traffic out of downtown would be wrong. And that's why I didn't want to get locked into what the route will or won't be. I have one proposal, there may be 17 before we get anywhere near doing it.
Oh yeah,
Can we have it as an agenda item?
for the next meeting, or Bill, what do you thought? So,
We can keep the discussion live and fresh.
do you want it?
I don't think
the
it's
idea is
necessary.
you have to
You-
go
you-
to the state. The state has got to get on board.
Yeah.
State's gotta do
Yeah,
it.
that GACIT hearing, it's
Executive
up
council,
to,
that's right. The executive
it's up to them
council
now.
will go on and-
You-
I mean, this has been beat around
What?
3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, what I would suggest is that we put it back on our agenda once, at least in maybe a month or 2 months, or maybe 3 months, after sort of the GACIT process has worked its way through, because if it is not added to the 10-year plan in this cycle, then it would seem to me that our goal is going to be to put all the pieces and parts necessary together for it to be included effectively in the next, the cycle that follows it, so that what we need to do may be very different depending upon whether it makes it out of the plan or not. So I want to make sure, I think, Bill, you just want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the shuffle someplace. Whether or not we have it on our agenda for next month, I don't think maybe that's going to be helpful, but I want to make sure that we do get it back on the agenda so that we can then decide, depending upon what other decisions have been made by the party, which way to go. So maybe putting it in as an update for either the...
Following the GACIT outcome.
yes,
basically.
yes.
Well, actually, that's probably not a bad idea, because from GACIT it goes to the full legislature.
And that's what.
And if that, so depending on what comes out of GACIT, we may look at trying to engage our local delegation and things of that sort. So maybe putting it back on the agenda. Well, actually, October, the hearings go through October.
Yeah, but the
Yeah, I don't know.
23rd.
the GACIT acts on a specific point, at a specific point in
Right,
time.
and I
It's-
don't- I'm not
At
entirely
that
sure
point
that
in
they-
time, we need to come back and decide what we want to do, where it is on our priority list.
So maybe asking staff, I've got the book out in my truck, I just didn't bring it in, but to make sure that it's on our next agenda following the scheduled GACIT vote.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that basically, that's an executive council vote, right? First?
Right.
Yeah.
Recommendation, yeah. Okay.
I might have missed it, for number 11, apply for grant funds. Is that just sort of a general thing? Just find some grant funds for some programs?
I think the attempt is to break out of purely highway and HUD money.
Okay,
That's
so
my
it's literally
understanding.
going out afield?
FEMA, Health and Human Services are already playing more than they used to.
Okay,
Economic development's not an area we typically have been going for in the past, so try to identify additional federal programs where grant money is available. In my understanding, and you know better, at this point, I think there's a more open mindset to looking at private grants as well.
okay.
Now, if I'm wrong, correct me.
No, that's correct.
So it's discovering new sources of grant funding is really what my understanding was of where we needed and what we were going to be doing.
Okay. Item B, review of NADO assessment exercise. We have it right here before us.
Are these goals going to be brought to the full meeting on Thursday? I mean, a week from today?
I didn't include that on the agenda. It's not on the agenda.
I think these were internal for the EC.
Oh, okay.
And now, if you want to make a motion in that, once they're revised and approved, they're shared or put out, I would not object to that, but I do not presume that this was automatically going out to everybody else.
The only reason I'm asking the question is, I mean, we've had a good introductory discussion, but getting back to Bill's point, make sure it doesn't get lost, slips through the cracks. So if it simply is appropriate to put the revised version and try to finalize this at our next meeting, that's fine with me. I just didn't know if it was on the agenda and we needed to sort of take any kind of action or come to any kind of consensus or conclusion.
I think it's going to prolong the meeting. I think this is strictly EC. That's all I look at.
I think asking the executive director to share an updated, corrected copy of our next meeting would be appropriate.
Okay. And then, okay, and before we leave this topic, Victoria brought up an issue that I think we need to make sure that is on here, or make sure that we feel comfortable. The completion of updates to the employee handbook. Is there, I don't know if we need to say it, but there's a consensus that we need to make more robust the section that deals with employee termination. Thank you.
All right, get back to the NADO assessment exercise. These are the results.
Is there a sense of what Cynthia wanted us to do with this at this point?
Basically, it's a review of the discussion from last time, all typed up and,
Okay, so basically having the comparisons.
yeah, it's,
What
yeah,
is
the
that?
results which you've already gotten in the past
Yeah.
with the discussion that we had last time. And there's one page in there that I crossed out that was wrong, so I'm just gonna go ahead and change. I had already fixed
You left it in there as a test to see if you...
Yeah.
Find out the ones who read it, right?
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead, sure.
Of staff? When you did the little clicker thing internally, was that done prior or after we did that as an executive?
After.
So you folks did that afterwards? Okay.
Yeah, because it was the idea of the committee to have the staff do it as well, compare.
Because I think one of the things, one of the reasons why I was sort of hoping that would happen is we can see if there were particular areas where there didn't seem to be sort of the same approach or mindset. And it looks to me, again, there's variations here, but it looks to me like most of these, the staff's perceptions were the same as the executive committee's perception. But and the other question that I had back then was whether or not we might be able to do something similar with the full commission. So is that on the agenda for the meeting next Thursday?
We have a couple of presentations and dues voting in minutes.
Okay. Do we have enough clickers, or do we have clickers available so that
Oh, yeah.
we could? Because I think, you know, we're talking about staff, very small group, really concentrate on certain things. You got the executive committee, it's a broader group, all of us are coming from different perspectives, that's another perspective, but we're still part of that kind of real inner circle. The regular commission members are not part, they are going to represent, it seems to me, much more closely kind of the general population's perspective. And so I think it's really important for us to know where we're not in sync, because that, I think, will help us figure out where we're going to focus. So I really like to suggest that it's not going to be on this next meeting.
The November meeting.
Do we figure out, do we have it, that is a really important component of the
I back that down a little bit. I don't disagree with capturing everybody, but I think a better way maybe to do it in a number of different sessions rather than tie up.
That'd be a whole meeting.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think that's appropriate. Reaching your goal is important. I don't think the particular method you're suggesting is the best way to go about it.
So what other method would you think would work?
I
How would you do that?
we know who the members are. Pick 7 or 8 or 9 dates when they can come in and do it as groups or individuals. Give us a 3-month period for them to come in and do it. That's my point. Is I want them to participate, but to tie up a whole, relatively infrequent meeting just with that, I don't think serves us the best.
Unless you have a special meeting, just for that.
That's another alternative for them. But again, the idea of having 3 or 4, and again, my feeling is, you know, a couple of weekdays, a couple of weeknights, a weekend day, so that people, that based on their schedules. And I would say set up at least, I'm going to say 4 to 6 occasions. How many do we have total on the
There's
MPO?
about 30 to 32.
See, yeah, that's my concern, is getting 30 people at one time, being able to do it, and taking that much time presents a challenge. The importance, I don't disagree with, and working hard to do it. I mean, I don't want to speak for staff, but it required the staff to go to Strafford one afternoon, so those from the Strafford area could go do it. You know, some way that ensures maximum or complete participation, but does not lock us into, oh, you got to be here today and we're doing it.
No,
That's my
So
concern.
a different setting, because I think it's a really valuable process.
Don't disagree
Yeah,
at all.
so I think that's good.
I think it's the best route. I have it one big meeting, you're gonna get the same attendance we have now, 0.
Right, you're not going to get enough.
You're gonna get maybe 6 or 7,
Yep.
and that's it.
I guess, you know, I'm still going to be a proponent that it be one of our quarterly meetings, because one of the things that we do at our quarterly meetings is to try and bring topics or presentations that we think the rest of the commission is going to be interested in hearing about. So for example, you said we've got sort of 2 presentations scheduled for this next meeting. What is more important than how we operate, how we see ourselves, how we interact? And it would seem to me that having that as the quote-unquote presentation at one of our quarterly meetings is an appropriate thing. And my hope would be that if we have enough time to prepare for it, that we send out this information and that the members are told, okay, this is an opportunity for you to come and give us your ideas and your perceptions. And as an aside, or sort of as a parallel thing, I think there's some real value to being able to see immediately on the screen sort of what the results were. To have people do it individually, but be able to see it. So if we did it, if we just do decide to do it, where we're bringing people in in a different mechanism, we take away that advantage of being able to see the immediate results on the screen. And it would have to be different. If the clicker piece doesn't work, then you just have to do it a different way.
Clicker piece still works. You're not doing it for individuals, you're doing it for groups, just these smaller groups.
Right, but
and I would also suggest why I have a problem with it. I would rather see it done. I would rather the executive committee have a chance to look at it, and then for the quarterly, a presentation, perhaps by the staff, perhaps by the executive committee, where we saw some of the differences with the discussion to follow. I think you're trying to put too much in at one point. And again, I just don't believe you're going to get 30 people in one place.
Well, how about having it as a special, at a regular meeting, but for people, and, you know, really trying to get input, to get people, because it's an opportunity for them to talk about what they want as opposed to seeing a presentation. And for the people that don't go, they have another opportunity in a smaller setting, so you could get more that way.
We do the clicker thing. Again, the whole point of the clicker thing is for people not to be biased by anybody else.
Right.
And the downside to doing multiple ones is that, at least presumably, to the extent these are public meetings that might be presented, then you're not getting sort of that completely unbiased feedback.
Everyone at the same time you're talking about, as opposed to hearing that other people have responded.
Right. I mean, someone goes online and says, you know, here's this is,
right.
They think this.
Right.
That might influence them. Now, again, that doesn't mean this. I mean, that's a cost to doing it differently, but there are advantages to doing it differently too. I'm just pointing
Yeah,
out.
and also, someone looking at this before they actually provide their input, they'd actually would have more time to think about these issues and might provide actually better information.
Maybe. No.
I just want to remind everyone, we did a clicker exercise at our annual meeting in May, and we did have a presentation, if you recall, and that's the commissioners. So they've had that exercise of how the clicker works and everything. So just to remind that. And also commission meetings, whereas our policy members, who are also commissioners, deal more with policy making. These meetings are supposed to be more education for commissioners. That was our goal a couple of years ago, to make them more educational.
Sure. This could be education.
Right. I'm just stating that we have done that exercise already, but not for this particular thing. It was just an overview of how they work.
So, not to beat a dead horse, but it seems to me that maybe we ask staff to come back with a recommendation at our next meeting in terms of how we maximize the positive pieces of looking at these issues and minimize the negative. One of the positive pieces is participation, trying to get as broad a level of participation as possible. But also to have another positive piece, it seems to me, is to figure out a way that it can be done so that people aren't biased about what other people. But we do that.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. And item C is the Strafford Regional Planning Commission Executive Director Goals. I don't know if you want to do each and every one of them, or you want to take it home and peruse it at your leisure, or the first time I've seen it. So.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Cynthia talk about them.
Yeah.
Do you want this back on the agenda for the next meeting then?
Next meeting.
Okay.
I'd like to include that exit 10 on this,
For the next meeting too?
I guess. That exit 10.
All right, sure. Discussion? Yeah. So exit 10, discussion, and the goals.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, this information was sent out several days ago, so I mean, presumably we've had a chance to at least skim through. I'm just wondering whether or not it might be useful to see whether or not there's anything in particular that people either think, or that people think maybe ought not to be included, or that they think is missing from here and ought to be included. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not sort of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
So we do it next time, and it's like,
Yeah.
we haven't spent any more time doing this. That would be a question that I would ask, is whether anybody saw anything here that really jumped out of it as being problematic or something that was entirely missing.
I don't see anything problematic looking at it, but I just would really like to hear Cynthia talk about these, because some of this reflects what she's gotten from us, and this is her interpretation of what makes sense.
These were all goals that the EC and the executive director came up with, I believe, starting in November of 2012. We had fruitful discussion, and a lot of these items that we came up with for goals.
That's on page, not numbered. We do follow 3C2. We do have a copy of the fiscal years 2012 through 2013 executive director goals. And a couple pages later, the goals are listed right there for 2012, 2013. And this one here, we have the new goals of 2013 through January 2014.
And you know, if you look at that here, there's 3 goals. Only 3 goals.
Yeah.
Primary goal, stay focused. Next one, commission speaks with one voice externally, and the third one is focused on more cost-effective planning areas.
Strategies too in the next page.
Well, there's a strategy, but those are not goals. Those are
Strategies.
I have a problem with the way this is worded. Not with what's there, but how this is being presented. I'm sorry, I do not see the primary goal. I don't see that as a goal. That's an underlying concept. The same goes for number 2. I don't have a problem with number 3, but I have a lot of problem calling these goals in the larger sense. They can be, a lot of this can be supported under 2 or 3 goals. I mean, stay focused should not have to be a goal, I'm sorry. That's an underlying precept of how an organization should operate. It's not a goal. So I would like to see something much more focused and directed at real goals to accomplish, is distinct from the unpriming principles that will operate.
Yeah.
The principles we will operate under. They're not the same thing. And this, like I said, not everything on here is important, but not the way it's laid out
I
here.
agree, because the second goal, speak with one voice externally, that's part of the way we do business. Yeah. Very important.
A lot of this wordage was generated in November of 2012. It was a very delicate moment, if I remember those meetings. So some of this probably does need to be cleaned up a little bit. But we were all, let's say, on edge. And this was sort of a movement forward to try to reestablish a sense of commitment to moving ahead. That's what it was.
Sure. My biggest concern, having been involved in doing the evaluation process, is we are all very busy people. And many times we ended up having the evaluation postponed, and then Cynthia did not get the benefit of that feedback for 2 years, or I think in one case it might have even been 3 years. And that's not good for the organization, it's not fair for the architect and director. So I don't have a problem postponing this next meeting. I just think we need to make sure that this is a high priority so that we
Item D
allow...
you're talking about, or you're talking about item
Well,
C?
the goals, 3C.
Oh, the goals, okay.
because to a certain extent, the goals are going to relate to what we have here is 3D in terms of what we're asking our executive director to do. So to the extent that those two things are connected, I just think we need to keep this as a high priority so that those who are doing the evaluation and Cynthia herself have the ability to move forward as quickly as possible.
So you're suggesting those items C and D be placed on next month's agenda?
Well, or 3C in particular, making sure that it is fairly high on the agenda. 3D, I don't see a reason why we can't have a brief discussion about it today in terms of the format. I think that's what we're...
We've got 2 minutes to do that then.
Oh, we might have to come back.
Well, this was the format that is being suggested, and it isn't the request for feedback and whether or not we like this format or think there ought to be different ones, or is there more substantive discussion that we're expecting?
We come back and do exactly that. Thanks to Bill. Bill, appreciate it.
We have 2 minutes to discuss this.
Go ahead. No. We'll come back, right?
So are we looking for a motion to adjourn to move into the MPO meeting?
Not adjourn,
Recess.
Recess. I'll make, you make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to recess until the end of the next meeting.
Who made the motion?
Ken, seconded.
But at least it should have been talked about.
Yeah, you can understand.
Should have been discussed.
I probably believe 94% of what I get. It's not hard, I've never seen it.
No, she said we don't have anything on it. The other thing she should have asking for the industrial park.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's probably right. We come right, we come from the Siemensville place right to the park. We drop off there.
Ken, thank you for your comment about the smaller towns being considered.
Really important.
Yeah.
Why would smaller towns even attend or be members unless they feel as though they're doing something out of this? Well,
We go to Boston.
yes.
Why aren't they paying their dues?
Yep.
Yeah, don't think we're getting it.
Yep. Right.
Okay, gonna get back into.
Do you need a motion to?
Need a motion to get back
Come out of
into.
recess?
Come out of
So
recess.
moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Ken, seconded by Tom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Executive Director's Annual Review. And we have a copy of the performance assessment that I believe Bill put together, didn't you, Bill? Okay.
Just for the sake of having something.
Yep, stock. We also have some valuation forms too, that I can get the bill, or we can discuss it 2 or 3 different ways. As for our city manager evaluation, you can modify it, change it, you know. I can bring that in at the next meeting, but didn't have it today with me, so. And, want to discuss, talk about it, Bill, what you got here?
Everybody read this letter here.
Mhm.
If there's any questions about that, this is just to get the ball rolling.
Sure. Past review period is what we discussed earlier.
Chair?
Yes.
My sense is there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's many, many different ways. And Bill has found another sort of way of doing this, which is great. My sense is that if the executive director and the small group that is actually doing the evaluation can agree on a format, that frankly I'm really happy with whatever that format is.
At this point, we don't have a review subcommittee yet.
Well, okay, but So at least we did in the past. So
Okay, we'll do it again.
Small group to set up. And there's so many different ways, but I think the thing that is really, really important, and I think the point that Bill's trying to make here too, is we need to make sure we don't overthink this. It needs to be simple enough so we don't get so caught up that it ends up taking 2 years as opposed to 1 year. Because it's such a big deal, and then we've lost all that time where we could have been having other discussions.
Right.
So I guess my encouragement would be that when we set up the group, they meet, one of the first priority items is what are we going to do, and to really focus on trying to keep it effective, but keep it as simple as possible so that it can be done on this annual basis.
So it should be at a minimum a 3-member subcommittee.
That's what we've had in the past.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
I'm ignorant about whether there was any kind of formal written process before.
Ken, do you remember what they,
Well-
just met and talked? What they-
No. We've had formats in the past.
You have, okay.
For many years, it was a format that was presented by Cynthia, and we used that. 1 year, I took, sort of on your theme, I took the format that we used with the city of Rochester, and we tried to use that, and then I think there's been sort of kind of gone back to that original form. So, again, each time, there have been several different formats that have been used. In the end, I just think that it needs to be something that everybody, that the people who are intimately involved with it agree is a workable tool, maybe not the best, but a workable tool, and that that is simple enough that the process can move along effectively as opposed to getting stalled because if it's just too complicated, it just takes too long, and then we miss the benefit of having done it. My sense.
I think then we probably should create a subcommittee right now, at the very least. Anyone interested in being a member of the?
What kind of time frame? When do we do it? Supposedly? When
To do a form or to do the evaluation?
Well, start with we need a committee to sit down with Cynthia and set some dates up and probably see what kind of form that she is comfortable with and what the committee is comfortable with and go from there.
So my sense would be, to answer Tom's question, the first meeting is not, what you're looking for is a group of people not to create the form, but to sit down with Cynthia and decide on what form is going to be. Yeah, that's probably one of the first suggestions.
I've been on with you 2 different forms. 3.
Have you been on?
Probably 3.
Yeah, I've been on it.
It's been a couple of years since she's been evaluated, right? Should be annually.
No, should be annually.
Yeah.
It's not been because of
But I think our process, I think part of the problem has been our processes in the past has been fairly cumbersome. And we're all really busy people. And finding times when all the people get together, Cynthia can take time out from all the other things that are going on to do this. And that's why I think the focus needs to be on trying to keep it maybe simpler than it's been.
It's got to be simple, so it hasn't been cumbersome.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the people that have been involved in the past, to my knowledge, have been folks who've been on the commission for a period of time. I've been involved in the past, Ed's been involved in the past, Tom's been involved in the past. I don't know if anybody else has. And so my suggestion would be if there are newer members of the commission who would be willing to take this on, then it'd be good to have some of that newer perspective incorporated into the process.
Well, I'd be glad to get involved in this one as well, but the handwritten note at the top, I think, is one of the 2 issues I'd like to discuss even before we go any further. Are we talking about a form and format for the executive director or for everybody so that everybody's the same? I think that,
What do you mean by everybody?
and all staff.
No, to me, this is executive director.
So is that a question from Cynthia and all staff?
Well, it's up to her to evaluate the staff.
Yeah, it's up to her.
It's not us.
So what
We
does that
don't
mean?
evaluate staff. To me, it's
I'm talking about the form. Why should there be any different process? I'm not talking about who does the review. Why should there be a different process for the executive director than any other staff member? That's the question I'm asking.
Well, one thing is she's the executive director and they're not. They work for her. That's the big thing. She does things that she's an all-encompassing individual. Whereas the staff, each one's got its own set of job skills that they use.
If you go to GDIT, where I'm now doing some work, that is thousands and thousands of people, we don't have, other than the CEO who will be evaluated by the board, everybody is evaluated the same way.
Same way.
I don't see, I think if you're going to adopt a form and format, it shouldn't apply to one person or one group differently than others.
See, yeah, I think if you get into too much depth of what exactly Cynthia's job skills are, and you start asking certain questions or evaluating certain aspects of her job, of what she's capable of, then you just can't apply it to all the other employees.
Didn't you just define your own question by saying the CEO goes to the board and all the other employees are?
Yeah.
Well, that's the same situation as here.
Okay?
You can make that
She's
argument.
a
I'm not
CEO.
necessarily disagreeing, but I want that issue.
For the board, and
Just again, using City of Rochester as an example, we have a form that I, as a director of the department, used to evaluate my staff. There was a different form that the city manager used to evaluate me.
Yes.
And there's yet a different process that the city council used to evaluate the city manager. So at least in our one community, which is a fairly good-sized organization, there were at least 3 different. Now, the first 2 were variations on a theme. Some of the questions that were asked about me, or were used to evaluate me, were very different than, there were a lot that were the same, but there were a lot that were very different because of the responsibility being so much different. Then the city manager process is entirely different as the basically CEO of the organization. So I personally do not have a problem having a different process to evaluate Cynthia that the group and Cynthia come up with that may be not in any way, shape, or form similar to what she uses to evaluate the rest of the staff. I don't have a problem with it. On the other hand, if the group decides they want to use the same form, I don't have a problem with that either. I don't think there's right or wrong here. I think it's just different ways of defining it.
I really have no problem with a different form, but the fact is that we know that going up front.
Right.
But we're just concentrating on her.
That's fine.
Now, that's what is important. I think that if you're going to have an evaluation process, that person that's going to be evaluated should know at the beginning of the year, rather than at the end of the year, then we're sitting down trying to say, now what criteria are we going to use here and so forth. And there's 3 members on the board and we sometimes have different ideas. We should have known that when the year started, Cynthia knows what she's going to be evaluated on, what our expectations are and so forth, rather than the 3 of us trying, well, and it wasn't just for the past year. Sometimes we were almost 3 years behind and we don't remember what we exactly said 2 years ago.
What we were
and
looking
which year
for.
are we evaluating now? We're evaluating the whole time period, and that's not good.
That brings up a question I had for Marilyn. For staff, is there any form of mid-year or quarterly review, or is it just an annual?
It's just an annual.
I'd love to see some form of mid-year review across the board. Granted, we're using a different, again, we're creating a process as distinct from the form. I'm talking both things here. I'm sorry if I'm going back and forth, but in my mind, I'd really like to see a little more definition about the whole thing. And I would recommend that for both, we don't have to do that part of it today, there be some form of mid-year review. That doesn't have to be a formal rating system, but for what it keeps our feet to the fire too, and helps us stay honest, if you will. So that, I'm open to any form and different forms as long as everybody knows from day one.
So you're looking for a mid-year review for staff as well as Cynthia?
Yes.
at least from my point of view, Cynthia is responsible to us. The staff is not. It's only Cynthia. The staff is responsible to Cynthia.
I'm saying the same essential process should apply to anybody. And I can agree or disagree with the mid-year.
I think Bob brought up a good idea, and it would seem to me, I ought to be able to look at sort of the template of the agenda 6 months from now. And if there's something that every year, at whatever 6 months from now is, March or April or whatever, that's a thing that we typically talk about at stage of the fiscal year. It's already on the agenda, and I think it's not a bad idea to have that sort of, that template, both for the annual evaluation process as well as a 6-month update, where Cynthia, we would have on our agenda that there's a 6-month update on how are we all doing with respect to the goals that were established by the organization, by the executive director. That might be a way of sort of institutionalizing this thing, not sort of slipping through the cracks. But I guess, Bob, I heard you being willing to volunteer to be a part of that 3-person committee. Frankly, I think it's a good idea for the chair to be a member, and so if you're willing to do that, I think that would be a good idea. And the question is, who might be the person?
And you suggested maybe we should have someone, well, I'm newer, but.
You're newer, and Bob is newer.
That's right, too.
And you were all speaking both of them.
Anyone else want to be on the subcommittee?
I'll be honored if you want.
Okay, good.
You can represent us both.
I can represent
Us
old timers on it.
All senators are all time, just leave that right.
Or just old.
I'm usually available any Friday, anytime. Any Thursday, as long as it's early in the morning. Because I have a 95-year-old aunt I have to take to the hairdresser every Thursday at noontime to have her hair done blue. Cordon, yeah. And and I work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays part-time, so.
Basically, that works for me.
Thursday, early Thursday or anytime
Thursday would be
early
good.
Friday?
As far as I'm concerned.
How about you guys work that out?
Okay,
I need to get running here in a minute.
yes.
Depends on
Okay.
what I sleep the night before.
I was gonna say, I can do it in Sommersworth City Hall as far as that goes. This is the activity.
Well, yeah, we can do that.
My point is,
It's a nice place. You were there the other
I've
day.
been there multiple times.
Okay.
But again, depending on, I'm open to where, and Thursdays and Fridays work for me. Monday is the only day that won't work.
It doesn't bother me where, so,
Yeah.
whatever's convenient. Bill, excuse me.
Could we have a recap of what we're going to do now? We're forming a committee. You're going to come up with the forms from Rochester, Sommersworth, and...
Oh, the one that's already in existence.
Previously
You said?
used forms, and then come up with a form for the committee to use. Is that it?
One very simple form.
So one of their first agenda items we would anticipate is that they would decide on the form format to use, and that the next time we would do that, and then would be a report of the annual evaluation.
Now, let me ask you this. When, in the past, when has your evaluation happened? January? July 1st?
Frankly, I think it ought to be just prior to the budget year, so that if we're going to incorporate it into the budget, that would be the natural. I don't know whether that works, because we may have several grants that are different.
The
fiscal
budget
cycles
year
or whatever.
starts January?
When do we have our annual meeting?
Our annual meeting is usually at the end of May.
Okay.
Oh,
Starts
So-
July 1st.
So once we get together and create this evaluation form, we don't really want to evaluate her until February, March,
Yeah.
something like that?
Or be done by the end of March, I would say.
Be done.
But
So we don't want to start this month, it's September.
That'd be my sense.
But we can meet to create a form, how's that?
Yeah.
And then we'll sit back and wait till January, or something like that. Or what?
Well, you're going to share that with Cynthia, and she can expect what you're going to be talking to her about next March.
No. But we don't have to do it in September.
No.
Okay.
So once we get the form, we should share that with her.
Is that what you guys want to do?
Yeah, I
Get
think
that
so.
done anyway, at least?
I'm just trying to work back.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Can the committee, let's inform, work out all this detail?
Sure.
Yes.
There's one issue that I need to bring up, but I have to leave in just
Okay.
a few minutes, so the committee doesn't mind working out that. Frankly, as a board member, I don't care.
Okay.
What you guys
All right.
about.
All right, so, all right. Talk, when you guys first want to meet?
No, you guys work it out.
Okay.
Can you do that?
All right, updates, New Hampshire Rail Authority, New England Rail Coalition, Sandy.
Well, I don't I didn't go to the last meeting, so I don't know if there's anything update, but they're pretty happy about having the
Tiger grant, yeah.
And they're still working, and mostly because the state doesn't participate in the AirPrag, we don't talk about Hampshire coast areas. We talk about where the communities along 93 have put big bucks in, so. And they're still hopeful of getting something up to, from the airport on up to Concord.
That's it. NHARPC committee update. Ken?
Okay, there's two items I want to talk about real quickly. One is our representation on the Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions. I've had a discussion both with Bob and with Tom. Bob has expressed an interest in attending the meetings. It would be great to have more than just one person from a commissioner perspective and staff.
I believe we're allowed 2 commissioners.
That's correct, that's correct. And Bob's schedule is such, and his interest level is such, that he would be more than happy to be the second person. Tom's situation.
My schedule is sort of, I'm here, I'm up north.
Yeah.
So it works for him. So I guess what I'd like to suggest, since both Tom and Bob are agreeable, that I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Bob as the second commission member to be designated as a representation to the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions.
Motion's been made, seconded.
No, I'm worried.
Discussion?
He said it so quickly, I'm worried.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
With my thanks to Bob.
Other business?
Yeah, so the second piece of all of that was that we had a very long meeting several weeks ago now to talk about what direction the association wants to go. And there are a couple of ways of looking at this. One is that the organization only supports its members, so that its entire constituency is its members. Another way of looking at it is that the organization does things on behalf of its members, so that our audience and our clients are much broader. So we had a really wide-ranging discussion. We identified lots of different things that the association might potentially do, and then we went sort of through a triage process of trying to identify those things that we thought were the highest priority, sort of middle priority, and a lower priority. Bob attended that meeting and was, and even though it was his very first meeting, was willing to participate and provide his perspective, which I think was very healthy. And so the minutes haven't yet been come out, and I'll make a point to make sure that I share that. But we had talked before about what is this thing, and particularly as it relates to the legislative process, it might not be a bad idea to step back and see how it's going to function, what it's going to do, things of that sort. So there was a very lengthy discussion in that triaging, and Bob actually agreed to participate as one of the smaller committees. It's going to sort of flesh out one of the focuses of the organization. And I do need to leave, but Bob, would you mind sort of just summarizing, or at least providing your thoughts, your feedback, having attended that meeting?
I found it very interesting, and I mentioned earlier, one of the complaints, basically the association, the way it physically appeared to me when I walked into this meeting, when it was the executive directors. Were there two out of 9 where we actually had 2 commissioners?
No, there were 3 or 4 of us that were actually commission members.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, about 4 of us, which means two regions.
Right.
And that was observed by the executive directors. They want to do what we want them to do, but if we're not there and we're not participating, it ain't going to happen. So that was actually, that was the biggest takeaway I had, is the executive directors were begging commissioners to participate, to become involved. I volunteered, what was it, Kim?
Mm-hmm. Kim Koulet.
I volunteered to go up and speak to his people, trying to get people involved. Otherwise, they're operating, and again, I disagree with some planning principles. I disagree with almost anybody and anything any day, but that's a different story. But my point is, they're not getting that richness of diversity. So I'm perfectly willing to jump. I was very impressed overall with the group. Very, very impressed. I thought it was a great meeting. We got into the issue of, can you function without a mission statement? And that's the committee I'm working on right now, to create a mission statement, which is going to change some of the bylaws as well. And just trying to put that together is just unbelievably complex. So, yeah, I don't know that we ever did come up with any consensus on whether it's supporting or working for or exactly what, but I think we actually did agree it's a little bit of both and trying to define that in a better way. So yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised, to be perfectly honest, because they were begging for input from new and different people, not just planners.
Are they actually begging? Are they going out to commissioners and asking?
So no, the commissioners are asking. And one of the commissioners was expressing his frustration that no matter what he did, he couldn't get people to come. And that's where Bob had volunteered as a commissioner in a sister organization to go and explain why he's willing to spend this time and energy going to this meeting. So part of that process is trying to figure out ways in which we can flesh out the participation to get it more effective.
As Ken pointed out,
a good day, Ken.
there are only a very small handful who have the time to do this. People's time is valuable. So you're back to what's the value? What's the added value to getting involved? And what is the future? And what is the role? So
you're getting involved and you're asking that question starting out, which is really important.
I have a question for you. The Legislative Tracking Committee and Kathy Johnson, how does she tie into?
who is Kathy Johnson?
Remember,
I don't know every name and every face.
Right. She's the contractor that was hired to track what's going on in the legislature as far as the bills.
Okay.
And she was rehired, I believe.
By who?
By the committee, by the association.
Okay. That was an issue that came up, and that's part of what they're trying to define. That one I had forgotten completely. But the whole discussion is why is so much effort going into reporting out all of this stuff? You're repeating what other people are doing. So that issue is open. There was no consensus. There was nobody defending it. But the larger question is exactly what should be the legislative focus and whose job is it? So that's moving forward. There is absolutely need for somebody to track it. Any professional organization has to have somebody doing that. But as to exactly what the role and how that will move forward and how they will define their involvement legislatively was one of the very issues, part of which is going to be driven by the mission statement and restating the purposes. Right now they're saying what are the purposes of the organization. I've suggested purposes may not even be the right word. But that's part of what I'm looking at. But very specifically, there was a lot of discussion about exactly how they should be tracking legislation and what role they should have relative. One of the issues was brought up a number of years ago. They actually introduced legislation, which I happen to think, as a professional association, is a proper role for professional association. Okay? And they seem to be scared of it. You know, it's fine to be in the background pushing people, but going out up front and taking a role. So I think that comes to part of what you're asking, if you will, and hopefully with some new blood in there and a little more, a higher level involvement, some of that, it was surfaced. And I think it will be addressed, and I think there's going to be an effort to focus less on reporting on legislation and more on doing things. You know, a proactive role rather than a reactive role. I would say that's certainly where I'm going to try and take the organization for whatever I can offer to it. You know, I think I've disagreed with everybody in here on something. You disagree, so what? It doesn't mean we can't work together, we can't move forward, but we got to be upfront, open, and focus and move.
I have noticed that the association supports some of the bills, and some they are questionable.
I belong to two others, Military Officers Association, State Veterans, same thing. There are people working full-time analyzing the list, and some we don't make any comments on. Others we feel we need to support, others we feel we not. So that is a function of the organization, intrinsically, if you will. How much effort and how it's focused, and should we be taking it from other organizations rather than investing in the hours and analyzing it first? There are other organizations already doing it. Why is this organization doing the same thing? That was one of the questions that was asked, and there wasn't a good answer at this point in time.
Yeah, Bob, I'd just like to say, I mean, I know Nancy works for a couple of other organizations as well, and what I find in those, and I don't know how much she gets paid,
Is she a
so how
lobbyist?
much of her time
Is
she
she a
can
lobbyist
dedicate
at all?
Huh?
Is she a lobbyist?
Is she a lawyer?
Yeah,
She is, okay.
that's what we hired her to do.
Okay.
Right. Her information hasn't been timely. It doesn't matter right now because the legislation hasn't been introduced, but once January comes and those hearings start, you gotta have timely, you know, and if she does it by email or something, but, you know, if you only get a report every 3 weeks or every month, you've missed 2 hearings.
Yeah.
And the bill's either passed or failed, you know?
That's something.
But I don't know what we pay her and how much she should be responsible for, so.
But this is the sort of feedback
Yeah.
that, you know, one of my big points is we're all too quick to complain, but are we giving feedback to the organization so they can change? That's tremendous.
What do we expect?
Right, what can we expect? I mean, yeah, because I
What do we
don't
expect
know
from
from
her?
what we've shown. Maybe we don't pay her enough to, maybe we only pay her to just
Maybe the
do,
association's
you know,
never
to-
made it clear what they want and when.
right, or what they want.
Don't assume she's wrong or they're wrong.
Right.
You don't know.
So we don't, you know. Yeah.
One other item, I noticed during the GACIT hearings that on map 21 funding, that the T&E and the scenic byways and SRTC funding is going away, being dropped from the agenda. Anybody knows that?
Oh, yeah, that, as a matter of fact, I didn't want to drag out and continually interrupt Mark, but when the question came up about set-asides, that's part of what's driving the set-asides. Many separate programs that have been funded separately have been combined into larger line items in map 21, but more freedom has been given to the states as to how they spend that money. Does that make a little bit more sense? That's basically what we're at. And I literally, either late last night or early this morning, the efforts are beginning right now on replacement for map 21, because it was only a 2-year, and we used to have 5-year programs. They're two separate issues. The decreases in funding levels, that's one part of it, and the way they are boxing, if you're an old military type, you know, you can't use blue money for red money and other things. That's the issue with map 20, the current map 21. That's the larger issue, yes. They eliminated separate funding lines and combined them into larger funding lines, but allowed the states more, I can't even think of the right word now. Flexibility in how they spend the money and moving it. They can move so much to a certain way, but they can't move more than that. These are issues, I happen to think, within the state. I've said it before, not for quite some time. I would suggest that before this round of elections, the EC should ask the director to hold a meeting with all 37, is it?
I agree.
Representatives and senators who represent Strafford County, so we understand each other. They can't support us if they don't know what we do, or if they disagree with us, we can't change if we don't know why they don't like us. They don't have to come. I have to tell you, I went to Rockingham's this last year. They had that legislative night for their whole, that was tremendous. That is tremendous. That's a stakeholder population. They're the ones who are going to say whether the DOT can get away with putting money where it's doing. If we don't explain to them why there's a problem, how it could be partially resolved, don't come to me crying if we get less than our fair share. Would you disagree with anything? Sandy's been on both so many parties, she knows.
I don't disagree with that at all. That's true. We've never had a good participation by the rep.
How can we, why should Cindy Porter support what we're doing if we've never ever had him in here? I just picked him because he was at the hearing.
Right.
I know
Have they ever
Sam.
been invited?
No,
I
not in
don't
a
know,
long
not in a
time.
long time, but the reality is, when you're a state rep, unless you're on a city council, or a school board, or the planning commission, or the conservation commission, you have no idea what's going on in those towns. So there's no nexus between what the community wants and what you're asked to vote on over there as a rep.
It might be, but it's only a handful of people contacting these people and getting their way.
Exactly. This comes, well, as I understand it, I believe the position at this point in time is that we don't want to touch politics. Inviting the whole delegation in is not political. You got to understand, they are the people who are going to who are going to determine whether, if enough people in the state agree that we should take some money from Nashua and Manchester and Keene and put it in Strafford County, it'll happen. If you can't even get your own state delegation to support you, why do you expect to see anything change? So
It's in the minutes, definitely.
Rockingham has had a meeting.
every year, they do a meeting.
Why the hell are we doing?
Tom, that's the question I'm asking. On one of the relative duties, the answer I got was, we were very afraid of getting involved in politics. If you did it for the Republicans, the Democrats, that's fine. If you invite the entire delegation, they are the ones who can determine how the funds in the state are distributed. You saying we're not getting enough? And you haven't talked to our delegation? You don't have any right to complain to me.
But we're based on politics.
I'm not disagreeing either, don't get me wrong. You're in the political system. It's part of the political system.
We're in the political
So how do you say, I don't want to be involved in politics?
We're in
What
the
do you
political
suggest?
system.
What do you suggest?
I am-
If and when?
Realistically,
Between the primary and the election? Or
yes, that would be excellent, Sandy. So we're talking sometime,
October or something, early October?
sometime in October. I don't care if it has to be a special meeting for the first time. Certainly encourage, I'll tell you, that's when I want Foster's at. I certainly want you there more so than ordinarily. It is that important. We want coverage and participation. We want people to come in and talk. We want the legislators to say, understand, this is what our SRPC sees, because we see the funding at the county level. This is why we feel we're not getting a fair shake.
So you're talking about 7 o'clock meeting, right?
Yep.
7 p.m., yeah.
7 p.m. Just to give you an example, in Rockingham, it is done at Unitil, and I believe Unitil picks up the cost for a very expensive meal. It's yeah. That was first rate. That made an impression on me. First rate, very well done, very good turnout.
Oh, maybe we can talk to Albany.
We've got Waste Management, we've got Albany. I mean, we don't have it. I'm back to the private-public partnership. None of us are going to do it on our own. No individual company, no individual town. We can either act to make this happen by integrating and getting that support, or we can sit here and complain.
Yeah, because the legislature also has a crack at the 10-year plan. After the executive council has the Public Works Committee will have a crack in the legislature.
That's right.
And then it goes to the, so it gives you a couple of shots at the 10-year plan if we think there's anything valuable in there.
And again, regardless of political affiliation, Waters and CATALDO are very interested. How many senators do we have? You know better than I do. Both our senators are interested and willing to be involved. Why aren't they involved? Because we haven't asked them.
We may actually have, I don't know, who's your senator up in Brookfield? Maybe
Oh, Jeb Bradley.
Jeb, so.
Jeb?
He grabs a portion of our,
Yeah.
of our catchment.
Well, then you certainly should be invited. That's my point. Everybody who's been elected into the state legislature should be invited at least once a year to hear what SRPC has, and for SRPC to hear what they feel their constituents are interested in.
Well, it's mid-September, beyond mid-September. You want to have it next month sometime, right? October.
Yes.
So where do we go from here? Do we have to have Cynthia arrange all this, or the staff arrange all this? I assume that's where you got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to come from her, inviting all these people. And
It should be a handwritten note.
For the first time, absolutely.
It's more response than a
I understand there's a mailing cost.
typed.
Not that I'm against it, but understand when we do these things, there are prices that are attached to them, not just time, but money. I'm willing to invest the time and money.
So you're saying to do it for this year?
Yes,
For this year?
next month.
Yeah.
don't talk about it, do it.
No, because,
I'd rather lead and be wrong than sit back
no,
for
I agree with you. Because the regional planning commissions are accused of not really being part of the political discussion because they're not elected. So we go right to the elected people and talk about these
We
issues.
do it every year.
Planning, what the planning is.
Yeah.
I don't mind
Exactly.
shooting myself in the foot, it'll grow back. But I think that we have to have a good agenda. We have to have people that are able to come up with situations and the ideas and the wants and the needs, and that has to be laid out. And who's going to do that? Are we asking Cynthia to come up with a list of items that we want to get before these people, or what?
Well, you know, part of this goes back to many of the items on what you're calling the goals. My objection isn't what they are, just physically how it's presented. Just so we're clear one more time. If nothing more than the 2014, these are our 2014 goals. Help us prioritize them. Bring new ones to us. We don't need any externals. We're really trying to get them. We don't want to be talking. We want to be listening. Very brief, and by the way, that's primarily not staff people talking. We're not educating, we're merely informing. It's the executive director, hopefully as many of the commissioners who can come. These are SRPC's projected 2014 goals. What are your concerns? It's that simple. Do not make this involved. What they did was it was a round table. Every representative and senator had a couple of minutes to say what they thought was important and what they thought was missing. That's all we want to do. Open that. We're not going to solve anything in one meeting, but it's going to finally be going to open those lines of communication and build some relationships.
So there were minutes of that meeting. You could go to.
Yeah, I would assume there are. That's open. I'm telling you, very, very impressive. The sheer number of people who showed up. And the catering was fantastic, and I know Unitel gave them the space and underwrote that, and it was first rate. And
So
again,
was it run by Cliff?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think
The
we have
first
time
year
to make arrangements
may not
to
be-
get anywhere.
Maybe a little quiet,
When's Cynthia coming?
but I think
Tuesday?
4 years, once this takes off,
I think it finally puts us in the mainstream on the funding side.
and that's where we need to be.
Yeah, on the state side, exactly. All right, I've said my piece.
No,
Maybe shut up.
glad you
Okay,
did.
go home.
I agree.
So can we have a recap of that? Is this something that we're actually going to do?
October.
You know,
October.
like approximately when you're thinking in October. Any ideas?
All right.
By the end of.
Yeah, close to the end of the month.
Yeah, we need some time. 'Cause I think she said.
I would like to see it between the
conference.
23rd and the 25th. I would like to see. Give me a reason why it has to be someplace else, fine. That is, I've given you a straw man to start from.
What days are those?
Wednesday to Friday.
Wednesday to Friday, yeah.
How'd you come up with those? How'd you come up with those days?
That's what he's available for.
Basically,
And my phone said, there,
It's
Right.
seemed a bit
We'll see you
suspicious.
there.
No, I think you gotta give Cynthia time.
You're still in the state legislature.
Yeah.
Pull
I was not
together.
state legislature.
Excuse
me?
Contract this month. I mean, Cynthia has enough time to.
I agree. I
Next
agree.
week's gonna be kind of crazy.
Well, that was my whole point. I mean, if you wanted to kick it out to
It's-
October 31st, Halloween, that's fine with me too. There's a certain perverse logic to that.
We've got a
Trick or
webinar
treat.
going on, we've got the commissioner, next week will be kind of busy, but I'll meet with her that Tuesday.
You guys know where I live?
Yeah, just tell her where we're coming from. It's,
Yeah.
See what she takes it.
Yeah.
And we can
Oh, she
assist.
can talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got all in her back.
Take you up on that.
Yep.
Next month's a busy month.
Yeah, it is. Okay, any other business besides what we just
I'll try to
discussed?
get you on that.
Nothing?
Oh, that's a great way to end your sheet.
That you had copied of.
Which one?
The.
Oh,
the
yeah.
manual stuff.
I've still got it here.
I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute, there's one, did I give you that one?
Yeah.
I did.
Not very much.
Well, because everybody in that packet, they did see the resolution that the city council in Sommersworth passed, pushing for exit 10. It was unanimous, so.
You did the same in Rochester, you not?
I don't think on exit 10.
I thought it
I
was.
don't think we have an
Okay.
exit. I think we just saw that a discussion
Okay.
to support, but I don't think we have.
I thought there were two letters, I can't remember who the other one was from.
Oh, that's the original.
Yeah, it's on J.
I got that copy.
Maybe.
I think Karen had something.
Karen.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Yep.
I'll second.
Second by Bill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, people.